Chinese bride thought no one wanted her, until a little girl whispered, "Can you be my mommy forever?" Lion had always imagined that her life would follow the same path as the women she grew up with. In her small village, girls usually married in their early 20s, started families soon after, and lived in homes filled with the busy warmth of children and community. She believed her life would unfold in a similar way. But year after year passed, and things did not happen the way she expected. Instead of moving forward, she often felt like she was standing still while everyone around her walked ahead. She had grown up as the middle daughter in a simple home. Her parents owned a small piece of land where they grew rice, and although they didn't have much, they made sure the children were always cared for. Lion learned early on to be responsible. She helped cook meals, carried water, and looked after her younger brother when their parents were working. People in the village always described her as gentle and hardworking. She was not the loudest person, but she listened well and was thoughtful. Yet in the world of arranged introductions and matchmakers, qualities like kindness often stood behind other things like beauty, age, and family wealth. When Lion reached 26, her parents began to worry. It was not because they felt she was incomplete without marriage. They worried because they saw how society would treat her if she remained single for too long. They feared she would be judged, pitied, or misunderstood. And so they encouraged her to meet men they believed would make good husbands. Relatives introduced her to sons of friends, neighbors suggested possible matches, and even older villagers tried to help by asking around. Lion accepted everything quietly, always respectful, always hopeful, but each meeting left her feeling a little more uncertain about her own worth. Sometimes the men were polite, sometimes distant, sometimes uninterested. A few looked at her with kind eyes but later chose someone else, often someone younger or with a wealthier background. Lion understood this on the surface, but deep inside, each rejection settled like a quiet bruise. She never complained, never cried in front of her family, but alone in her room, she would lie awake wondering if something about her made her unlovable or forgettable. Her friends, meanwhile, began to marry one after another. Weddings filled the village each year. Red banners, music, laughter. She helped prepare decorations, helped the brides get dressed, and cheered with everyone else. She was happy for them, genuinely. But sometimes, at night, she would think about how she was always the helper and never the bride. She wondered why fate seemed to skip over her again and again. As she neared 30, whispers and comments became harder to ignore. People did not mean to hurt her, but their casual remarks often did. "Still no husband?" someone would ask at the market. "You should marry soon," said another. "Don't wait too long." An elderly aunt once sighed and said, "You're a good girl, but good girls must be chosen before they become too old." Each comment was small, almost harmless, but together they built a weight she carried everywhere she went. She began to avoid gatherings. She stayed home more. She felt herself shrinking, not physically, but inside. She felt as if she were fading from the circle of women who were considered desirable brides. Eventually, Lion made a difficult decision. She chose to leave the village and move to a nearby city. Her parents were worried but understood. They hoped that distance from judgment and tradition might help her breathe again. Lion hoped so too. Perhaps in the city, she thought, she would not stand out for being unmarried. Perhaps people there lived lives too busy to question her choices. And perhaps, if she were lucky, she might find something meaningful to do, something that made her feel needed. Life in the city was both exciting and overwhelming. At first, she felt small and out of place among tall buildings, buses full of strangers, and streets that never seemed to rest. She rented a single room in an old apartment building and found a job at a small community center. Her task was simple, helping with events, organizing supplies, and assisting during activities. She earned enough to live modestly, and though it was not the life she once pictured for herself, it gave her something she had long missed, a sense of purpose. Slowly, she began to adjust. She learned the bus routes, made a few acquaintances at work, and discovered comfort in the quiet parts of the city. The park near her apartment, the library where she could sit for hours, and the morning market where she bought vegetables from the same smiling vendor each week. In these small routines, she felt a gentle rhythm settling into her life. But even as she built this new routine, there was a quiet ache inside her. She saw mothers walking with children, holding hands, sharing snacks, and laughing together. Every time she watched them, a soft longing filled her chest. It was not just the longing for a child, but the longing to belong to someone, to have someone depend on her, to give and receive the simple warmth of family. She tried to push these thoughts aside, reminding herself that life did not always follow a single path. The community center often organized activities for children, craft days, reading hours, small festivals. Lion was always helpful, though she rarely spoke much. She smiled at the children but kept a little distance, afraid she might not know how to interact with them naturally. Some children were loud and playful, others were shy. But one thing was constant. Children always noticed kindness, and they noticed it in Lion. One weekend, the center hosted a charity festival for local families. There were booths with handmade toys, snacks, and small games. Lion was responsible for keeping the craft table organized. She helped children cut paper shapes, glue decorations, and paint little wooden animals. Her movements were gentle and patient, and her soft encouragement made shy children more comfortable. It was during this event that she first noticed the little girl. The girl could not have been more than 5 or 6. She wore a light pink dress that was slightly faded and carried a small backpack decorated with cartoon rabbits. She stood behind a booth to the side, half hidden, watching Lion with curious eyes. She wasn't playing any games, wasn't talking to other children. She was simply observing. At first, Lion smiled politely, thinking the girl was just shy. But she noticed that the girl kept following her with her eyes, moving quietly from one spot to another, staying close without approaching. Lion felt a tug of curiosity but didn't want to frighten her, so she continued her work while keeping an eye on the little watcher. Eventually, during a quieter moment, the girl stepped closer. She still didn't speak, but she stood near the table and watched Lion cut a paper butterfly for another child. When the child left, the girl slowly reached out and touched one of the paper scraps. Lion gently picked up a small piece of colored paper and offered it to her with a soft smile. "Do you want to make one too?" she asked. The girl didn't answer with words. Instead, she carefully nodded. Lion guided her hands, helping her fold the paper, and noticed how carefully the girl concentrated, as if the butterfly were something precious. When they finished, the girl held the small paper butterfly as though it were a treasure. Then unexpectedly, she wrapped her arms around Lion's waist in a quick, spontaneous hug before stepping back again. Lion froze in surprise. Children rarely reached for her like that. The warmth of the hug lingered long after the girl walked away. Later, one of the staff members approached and explained that several children from a local orphanage were attending the festival that day. The moment he said it, something inside Lion stirred. A softness, a sadness, and an unspoken question she didn't yet understand. She did not know the little girl's name then. She did not know her story. She only knew that for the first time in a long time, someone, small, quiet, innocent, had shown her a pure, simple attachment. It touched a place in her heart that had been empty for years. That night, after she returned to her small room, she sat on her bed holding the memory of that hug. It was such a small moment, but it made her feel something she thought she had lost completely. The feeling of being wanted, not because of beauty or status or age, but simply because of who she was inside. She didn't know it yet, but that little girl was about to change everything in her life. After the festival ended, days at the community center returned to their usual calm rhythm, but Lion could not forget the little girl who had followed her so closely. She remembered the soft touch of that small hug, the gentle way the girl had held the paper butterfly, and the quiet, intense way she had watched her through the afternoon. Something about that moment kept drifting back into Lion's thoughts, like a small wave that refused to fade. She wanted to see the girl again, but she knew she had no reason to visit the orphanage, and she did not want to appear strange or desperate. So she tried to carry on as before, doing her tasks, greeting people with polite smiles and keeping herself occupied. But her heart, which had long been quiet and still, now had a tiny spark inside it, gentle but persistent. A week passed, and the community center prepared for a children's visit from the same orphanage. The staff often invited children for art activities, story time, or group games. Lion helped set up craft materials, folding colorful papers into neat stacks and placing boxes of crayons in the center of each table. As she worked, she felt a small excitement building inside her, though she tried to hide it even from herself. When the children arrived, she looked for one face in the crowd without meaning to. Some looked familiar, but others were new. Her eyes scanned the group again and again, hoping to see that tiny figure in the pink dress. And then she saw her. The girl stood near the back of the group, holding the same backpack decorated with cartoon rabbits. She looked around with quiet curiosity until her gaze landed on Lion. In that instant, her entire expression changed. Her eyes widened, her lips formed a shy smile, and then, without hesitation, she ran toward Lion as fast as her small legs could carry her. Before Lion could react, the girl wrapped her arms around her waist again, holding tightly, almost as if she feared Lion might disappear if she didn't hold on. Lion bent down gently and returned the embrace, feeling a wave of warmth spread through her chest. "You remember me?" Lion whispered softly, though she knew the girl probably couldn't hear her clearly as her face was pressed against her. The girl nodded without lifting her head. One of the staff members from the orphanage walked over, smiling. "She doesn't usually run to people like that," he said gently. "Sometimes she follows them, but this is special." Lion looked at the small girl in her arms. She didn't know why this child had chosen her, but she felt deeply honored. When the girl finally let go, she took Lion's hand as though it belonged to her. The simple act left Lion speechless. The staff introduced the girl. "Her name is Maya," he said. "She's a quiet one, but she feels emotions strongly. If she feels safe with someone, she shows it with her whole heart." Lion repeated the name silently. Maya, a beautiful name for a beautiful child. Throughout the entire visit, Maya stayed close to Lion. During craft time, she sat beside her, holding onto her sleeve as if afraid she might drift away. When Lion helped other children, Maya watched with a gentle, protective gaze, as though checking that no one else would claim Lion. When snack time came, she carefully chose the smallest cookie, offering it to Lion with both hands. The gesture was so thoughtful, so innocent, that Lion felt her heart soften even more. Some of the staff members smiled knowingly. A few whispered that children sometimes bonded with volunteers, but Maya's attachment seemed different, stronger, deeper, almost instant. At one point, Lion quietly asked the orphanage worker, "Where did she come from? I mean, what is her story?" The worker sighed softly in a tone filled with understanding but also sadness. "She was found near a hospital when she was very young. No one knew who her parents were. She was only a baby. The orphanage took her in. She's been here ever since." Lion looked at Maya with new eyes. The idea of a tiny baby left alone somewhere touched her in ways she could hardly describe. She felt protective of the little girl, even though she had only just learned her name. Maya, unaware of the conversation, was happily drawing with crayons, her small fingers gripping the colors with care. She made little shapes and patterns, which did not look like anything specific, but to her, they were important. Every few minutes, she would look up to make sure Lion was still there. As the visit continued, Maya's attachment grew stronger. She followed Lion from room to room, tugged lightly at her shirt when she wanted attention, and leaned against her arm whenever she felt shy around other children. Lion was surprised by how natural it felt to respond to her, to comfort her, to guide her small hands during activities. When it was time for the children to leave, the room filled with noise and movement. Some children were excited, others tired, and a few were reluctant to go back. But Maya reacted differently. The moment she realized that she had to leave Lion, her face changed. Her smile faded, her eyes grew anxious, and she held Lion's hand even tighter. "It's okay," Lion whispered quickly, trying to soothe her. "You'll come again. I'll see you again soon." But Maya shook her head, her eyebrows pinching together as if she couldn't accept that answer. The staff gently encouraged the children to line up, and most did so. But Maya would not. She stayed rooted beside Lion, gripping her hand with surprising strength for someone so small. When one of the caregivers tried to guide her to the line, Maya quietly hid behind Lion, holding on to her waist as though it was her only safe place in the world. Lion felt torn. She didn't want to make things harder for the caregivers, but she also couldn't bring herself to push Maya away. She bent down, trying to meet the girl's eyes. "Maya," she said gently, "you'll come back, I promise." For the first time, the little girl spoke directly to her. Her voice was very soft, almost a whisper, as if she feared the world might break the sound apart. "No," she said simply, "I want stay." The words were quiet, but they pierced right through Lion's heart. One of the caregivers came over with understanding in his eyes. "She'll be okay," he said. "Sometimes it's hard for her to let go. She'll calm down once we reach the van." Lion nodded, though her chest felt heavy. She gently uncoupled Maya's small fingers from her shirt. The girl clung to her, trembling slightly. Lion lifted her into a hug, one last warm, soft embrace, and whispered, "I will see you again." When she placed Maya down and watched the caregiver take her hand, her heart pulled painfully. The little girl looked back again and again as she was led away. Even when she reached the doorway, she kept turning around, as if memorizing Lion's face. The moment the group disappeared down the hallway, the room felt strangely empty. That evening after work, Lion walked home slower than usual. The city streets were full of people, but she felt a quiet loneliness settle inside her. Not the old loneliness she had become used to, the one shaped by her own emotions, but a new one born from missing the presence of a small girl who had unexpectedly chosen her. When she reached her room and sat on the edge of her bed, she realized that Maya's soft voice kept echoing in her mind. "I want, stay." It was such a simple sentence, spoken by such a small child, but it held a weight she could not ignore. Lion felt something awakening inside her, something tender, longing, and brave. She didn't know what it meant yet, but she could not push it away. The next few days felt unusually long. She wished she had something of Maya's, a drawing, a smile captured in a photo, anything. She kept looking at the craft table during work, remembering how Maya had sat beside her, how she had leaned her tiny head against her arm. Whenever she thought about childhood, she imagined laughter, games, and joy. But now she knew that some children spent their early years without a steady hand to hold, without a quiet voice to comfort them at night. She wondered how many days Maya had spent waiting for someone to choose her, for someone to see her, not as a responsibility, but as a child deserving love. The thought made her chest tighten. She hadn't planned to become emotionally attached. She hadn't even planned to interact closely with children. But Maya had touched her in a way that felt natural and inevitable, as if their hearts had recognized each other before their minds did. One afternoon, Lion finally gathered her courage and asked the center director, "When will the children from the orphanage visit again?" He looked through the schedule and replied, "Probably next month. They rotate their visits among several places." A whole month. The thought felt heavy, but she thanked him politely. As she walked home that day, she realized something very important. She wanted to see Maya again, not as a visitor, not as a volunteer, but as someone who genuinely cared about her. She didn't know what it meant, and she didn't know where it would lead, but she knew with complete certainty that she needed to understand this connection more deeply. Her life had always been quiet and predictable. But something new was forming, something unexpected, tender, and filled with possibility. She couldn't explain it yet, but she felt that her path had begun to shift the moment that little girl had run into her arms. And somewhere deep in her heart, she sensed that this was only the beginning of a story neither of them had seen coming. The days felt long as Lion waited for the next chance to see Maya. Though she tried to focus on her work, her thoughts kept drifting back to the little girl with the quiet eyes and the small hands that held her so tightly. Lion often found herself replaying their last moment together, the soft whisper, "I want, stay," ringing clearly in her mind as if Maya were standing beside her. A part of Lion was surprised by how deeply the child had touched her heart. She had always imagined children as something far away, something that belonged to other women, women who had already married, who had homes filled with laughter, who moved easily among family circles. Yet Maya's presence had unlocked something inside her, something warm and protective that she didn't even know she had. One morning, about 2 weeks after the visit, the community center received a call. The orphanage wanted to bring a small group of children for a reading session. It was not a full event, just a simple morning activity. When the director announced it, Lion felt her heart beat a little faster. She tried not to look too eager, but her hands trembled slightly as she cleaned the reading corner and arranged cushions for the children. She told herself not to expect anything. Maybe Maya wouldn't be in this group. Maybe she would come but not remember her as strongly. Lion tried to prepare her heart for all possibilities, but deep inside, one hope repeated again and again. "Please let me see her." When the children arrived, Lion stood near the entrance, pretending to check supplies but secretly searching each small face. One by one they walked in, some waving happily, some shy, some talking to each other. But she didn't see Maya. A gentle sadness settled inside her chest. She kept arranging books even though everything was already in place. The reading session began, and she tried to stay focused, helping the children sit comfortably and guiding them through the picture books. Then, just as she began to accept that Maya wasn't coming, she heard soft footsteps in the hallway. She turned her head almost unconsciously, and there she was. Maya stood in the doorway, looking around with wide, searching eyes. She spotted Lion, and her entire face lit up instantly. Without hesitation, she ran forward, her backpack bouncing with each step. Before Lion could say a word, Maya hugged her with all the strength her small arms could give. It was a long, warm hug, one that felt like a reunion after years instead of weeks. "You came," Lion whispered, unable to stop the soft smile on her face. Maya nodded against her shoulder. The caregiver accompanying her approached and said quietly, "She insisted on joining this group. She kept saying she needed to see someone. I think we know who." Lion felt warmth spread through her heart. Throughout the reading session, Maya sat glued to Lion's side. She held the edge of Lion's shirt gently and leaned her head against her arm as they flipped through the pages together. When other children pointed at pictures or laughed at funny parts of the story, Maya simply watched them quietly, always keeping one hand on Lion like a small anchor. After story time, the children moved to the craft area to make simple drawings. Most scattered around, choosing crayons and paper excitedly. But Maya stayed close to Lion, choosing colors carefully and looking up every so often to make sure Lion was still by her side. At one point, she tugged at Lion's sleeve, lifted her small paper, and showed it proudly. It was a picture of two figures, one tall, one small, holding hands. Both had circles for heads and simple lines for arms and legs, but there was something touching about how closely the figures stood together. "For you," Maya said in a soft whisper. The drawing felt like a priceless gift. Lion held it gently, afraid to bend or tear the paper. "Thank you," she whispered, her heart full. As the morning went on, Lion noticed something else. Whenever she moved even a step away, maybe to fetch scissors or crayons, Maya watched her nervously, her eyes following every movement. The moment Lion returned, Maya relaxed again. This deep attachment from a child she had only met twice both touched her and worried her. She didn't want Maya to feel insecure or afraid. She wondered what had caused this little girl to cling so tightly. Was it loneliness, fear of losing someone she cared for? A heart shaped by early abandonment? At the same time, Lion couldn't deny the emotions blooming inside her. She wanted to protect Maya. She wanted to give her comfort, safety, and affection, not temporarily but consistently. It scared her a little how strong these feelings were, but they also felt natural, as though her heart had simply been waiting for someone to fill the quiet space inside it. When the visit ended, Lion knew what was coming. The moment the caregivers announced it was time to go, Maya stiffened. Her fingers clung to Lion's hand tighter than before. Her eyes grew glossy, full of worry. Lion knelt down to comfort her, but Maya shook her head and pressed her face into Lion's shoulder. "I don't want to go," she whispered. It was the same quiet tone she used before, soft, trembling, full of emotion. "You will come again," Lion reassured her. "I will be here." But this time, Maya did not nod. Instead, she looked into Lion's eyes with an expression so serious, so full of longing that it made Lion's breath catch. "Can you be my mommy forever?" she whispered. The words were so soft they almost dissolved in the air, but Lion heard every syllable with complete clarity. Her heart froze for a moment. She felt the world go quiet around her. The children laughing, the staff moving around, the soft music from the speakers, everything seemed to fade. All she could see was Maya's small face, her hopeful eyes, and the shy courage it took for her to ask such a question. A warm ache filled Lion's chest, an ache both beautiful and overwhelming. She opened her mouth, but no words came out at first. She had never expected a child to ask her something so big, so life-changing. She didn't know how to respond, not because she didn't want to, but because she wanted to say the right thing. Before she could speak, one of the caregivers gently touched Maya's shoulder. "It's time," he said softly. Maya whimpered and wrapped her arms around Lion's neck, hugging her tightly, as if she never wanted to let go. Lion hugged her back, her own eyes growing misty. She wished she could freeze the moment, wished she could give the little girl everything she wanted right there and then. But life was not that simple. She was not prepared. She didn't even know the process, and she feared making promises she might not be able to fulfill. Still, she whispered gently into Maya's ear, "You are very special to me. I will see you again." The caregiver lifted Maya carefully, and the girl reached out toward Lion, crying silently, her little hand stretching out. Lion felt her heart break a little as she watched the group walk away, Maya turning her head again and again until she disappeared through the door. That moment changed something inside Lion forever. That night, long after the center had closed, Lion stayed behind cleaning the rooms alone. Her steps were slower than usual, her thoughts heavier. Every time she touched a book, a chair, or a craft tool, she remembered Maya sitting beside her, smiling shyly, whispering her question. "Can you be my mommy forever?" Lion sat on one of the chairs and held the drawing Maya had made. Two simple figures holding hands. The drawing seemed innocent, but it carried a world of meaning. She realized she could no longer ignore what her heart was telling her. Maya didn't just want someone to care for her, she wanted someone to belong to. And Lion, in a way she never expected, wanted the same. She spent days thinking about it. Her mind was filled with questions, fears, wonder, and possibilities. Could she take care of a child? Could she become a mother on her own? Would society judge her? Would her family understand? Could she provide a stable, loving home? But no matter how many questions she asked, she always came back to one truth. She loved Maya. Not in the passing way a volunteer loves a child they meet at work. Not in the distant way adults admire children, but in a deep, real way. A way that made her want to protect Maya, hold her, comfort her, and give her the safe home she deserved. The next week, Lion made a quiet decision. She walked to the orphanage, her heart pounding with nerves, and asked to speak to the director. With careful words, she explained her connection with Maya. She expressed her desire to learn more about the process, not making promises but showing sincere intention. The staff listened kindly. They told her adoption was possible, though it involved many steps: evaluations, interviews, home checks, paperwork, and time. They told her she needed to be absolutely sure because children like Maya needed stability, not temporary affection. Lion nodded. She knew this wasn't a small choice, but she also knew that love was not something that waited for the perfect moment. It arrived in its own time, sometimes when least expected, sometimes in the form of a small girl with hopeful eyes. As she walked out of the orphanage that day, a strange sense of peace settled inside her. She felt nervous, uncertain, and afraid of making mistakes, but beneath all those feelings, something deeper was growing: courage. The moment Maya whispered that question, a door had opened inside Lion's heart. A door leading to a new life, a new purpose, a new kind of love. And for the first time in years, Lion no longer felt like she was standing still while others moved ahead. She felt like she was finally taking her own step forward, toward a future she never expected, but one she already cared for deeply. After Lion visited the orphanage and expressed her wish to learn more about adopting Maya, her life slowly began to change. On the outside, everything still looked the same. She still lived in her small rented room, still worked at the community center, still walked through the same busy streets each morning. But inside her heart, something new had taken root, something brave, warm, and hopeful. She woke up every day thinking of Maya. She went to bed at night remembering the softness of her voice, the way she held her hand, the way she whispered her wish to stay with her. Lion had been alone for so long that she had learned to numb her feelings. But now it was as if her heart had started beating differently, stronger, clearer, more alive. The orphanage explained that the process was long and required many steps. They told her she would need documents, personal interviews, and evaluations to see if she could provide a stable, loving environment. They warned her that adoption was not simple or easy, especially for a single woman without a large income or a traditional family structure. Lion understood. She knew the road ahead was going to be difficult, but she also knew why she wanted to walk it. She wanted Maya, not because she felt sorry for her, not because she needed someone to fill her loneliness, but because every time she looked into that little girl's gentle eyes, she felt something true, a deep, honest connection that felt like it was meant to be. She began the first step, a personal interview. A kind woman from the adoption department asked Lion questions about her life, her job, her health, and her plans for the future. Lion answered with honesty even when she felt nervous. The woman asked, "Why Maya?" Lion paused before answering. She didn't want to give a rehearsed reply. She wanted to say something real. "She chose me first," Lion said softly. "Before I even realized it, she reached out to me with her whole heart. She made me feel like I mattered. I want to give her the same feeling every day of her life." The woman nodded, touched by her sincerity. Next came home visits. Lion spent days cleaning her small room, rearranging furniture, and making space. She didn't have much, but she made everything neat and comfortable. She imagined where Maya would sleep, where she would keep her books, where her toys would sit. She imagined the sound of her small footsteps filling the room with life. When the inspector visited, she looked around carefully, checking safety, space, and atmosphere. Lion answered questions politely, hoping her simple home would be enough. After the inspection, the woman smiled gently. "It's small," she said kindly, "but it feels warm. Children don't need big houses. They need love, care, and stability." Lion felt relief wash over her. But the hardest part was yet to come, waiting. Days passed slowly. At work, Lion found herself glancing at the door every time it opened, half hoping Maya might walk in with one of the groups. She cleaned tables, prepared supplies, and greeted visitors, but her mind was always half somewhere else, wondering how Maya was, if she missed her, if she asked about her. Then one afternoon, the orphanage brought a small group of children again. Lion tried not to look too hopeful, but her heart was beating fast. And there she was, Maya, holding her rabbit-shaped backpack, her eyes searching the room the moment she walked in. When her gaze fell on Lion, her expression lit up like a small sun rising after a long night. She ran straight to her and hugged her with all her tiny strength. Lion knelt down and hugged her back, closing her eyes for a moment as emotion rushed through her. She wished she could tell Maya everything right then. She wished she could say, "I'm trying to bring you home. I'm working on it every day." But rules didn't allow that. Nothing was certain yet. She didn't want to plant hope in Maya's heart before she was completely sure. During the visit, Maya stayed closer than ever. She held one of Lion's hands while drawing with the other. She showed her every little crayon mark she made, looking up each time to make sure Lion saw. And every time Lion smiled or nodded, Maya's whole face brightened. When the children moved to the play area, Maya tugged on Lion's sleeve and whispered, "Sit with me." So Lion sat. She watched Maya stack wooden blocks, arrange small toys, and create her own little world. Every few minutes, Maya would look up just to make sure she was still there. A caregiver approached Lion quietly. "She talks about you all the time," he said with a warm smile. "Every night she asks when she can see you again. She shows the other children the drawing she made of you too." Lion's heart softened deeply. She didn't know what to say, so she just nodded, afraid her voice might shake if she spoke. Later that evening, when it was again time for the children to leave, Maya held onto Lion like before. But this time she didn't cry. Instead, she pressed her small forehead to Lion's cheek and whispered, "I'll wait." Those two words almost broke Lion's heart in the sweetest way. After the children left, Lion went home with a new determination. She filled out more forms that night. She gathered documents she needed. She called the adoption office to confirm deadlines. She visited the library to read more about raising children, especially children who came from difficult beginnings. She wanted to be ready, not just on paper, but in her heart, her mind, and her daily life. Weeks passed as paperwork moved slowly. Sometimes Lion felt hopeful. Sometimes she felt scared. What if her application was denied? What if something went wrong? What if someone else adopted Maya before she had a chance? These thoughts kept her awake at night. But every morning she woke up and continued trying. One day she received a call from the orphanage. Her heart almost stopped when she saw the number. "Your application is moving forward," the voice on the phone said kindly. "We are scheduling the final review. You've done well so far. Please stay patient and hopeful." After the call, Lion sat on her bed and cried softly, not because she was sad, but because the path she feared might close was slowly opening. During this time, Maya visited the center again. This time, something surprising happened. Lion noticed that the caregivers seemed more relaxed around her, watching with softer expressions. One of them even said, "She's so different with you, calmer, happier." Maya held Lion's hand the entire time, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. When they were drawing, she made another picture, this time of a house with two figures standing in front. One tall figure, one small figure, and above them a big sun shining down. "For us," Maya whispered. Lion took the drawing as if it were precious treasure. Later, as the children prepared to leave, Maya hugged her tightly again, but this time she whispered something new. "You won't forget me, right?" Lion's heart squeezed. "Never," she said firmly. She wished she could tell her everything. She wished she could say, "I am fighting for you. I think of you every day. I'm trying to bring you home." But she couldn't yet, not until everything was certain. Another week passed, then another. Finally, one late afternoon, Lion received a call she had been praying for. "Miss Lyon," the adoption officer said warmly, "your application for Maya has been approved." The world seemed to stop. Approved. The word repeated in her mind like a soft bell that would not stop ringing. She put a hand over her mouth, tears filling her eyes. She tried to respond, but her voice was lost in emotion. When she finally spoke, it was a whisper filled with joy that had no limits. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you so much." That night, Lion could not sleep. She cleaned her room again and again, arranged the blanket where Maya would sleep, placed her drawings in a small box by the bed, and sat quietly imagining how life would feel when Maya finally came home. She imagined brushing her hair in the morning, helping her put on her shoes, holding her hand on the way to school, cooking small meals, reading bedtime stories, and comforting her through fears and dreams. She imagined waking up to a little voice calling her Mama. Tears of happiness fell down her cheeks just thinking about it, and when she finally lay down to rest, she whispered softly into the darkness, "Soon, Maya, very soon." It was in that quiet moment that Lion realized something beautiful. She had spent years believing no one wanted her, but now she knew the truth. Someone did. A little girl with big hopeful eyes had chosen her first. And soon they would choose each other forever. The day Lion received the approval for adoption became a moment she returned to again and again. It felt like a dream, something too beautiful to be real. For years, she had lived quietly, believing her life would always be ordinary, always small, always passing by unnoticed. Yet now she was standing at the edge of a new beginning, one filled with warmth she had never dared to imagine. She wanted to run to the orphanage right away to tell Maya everything, to hug her and whisper that she was wanted, chosen, and loved. But she knew she had to wait for the official day. The staff explained that there were still a few final formalities, signatures, and conversations. Everything needed to be done carefully, step by step, so that Maya could transition smoothly into her new home. Even so, Lion could hardly contain her feelings. Every morning, she woke up excited, wondering how many more days until Maya would walk through her door. She cleaned her little room again and again, making a special place for Maya, a small corner with soft blankets, picture books, a tiny pillow decorated with clouds, and a few simple toys she had saved money to buy. Lion had never been wealthy. She didn't have the ability to buy expensive things, but she bought everything with love. She chose toys Maya could hold and feel comforted by. She chose books with bright pictures and gentle stories. She chose colors she thought would make Maya smile. Some nights, Lion would sit on the edge of the small bed she prepared and imagine Maya sleeping there, curled under the blanket, breathing softly. She imagined checking on her in the middle of the night, making sure she was safe and warm. She imagined covering her gently if she kicked off the blanket, brushing hair from her forehead, whispering sweet words. She imagined the sound of a child's voice filling the room, a voice that would soon call her Mama. The thought made her heart tighten and soften at the same time. Finally, the day arrived. The orphanage called and said, "Please come tomorrow morning. It will be the day Maya goes home with you." Lion almost dropped the phone from excitement. She spent the entire night awake, not because she was anxious, but because she felt too full of joy to rest. She sat by the small bed, holding Maya's drawings in her hands, the pictures the little girl had made for her. She looked at the simple lines of two figures holding hands, the house under the shining sun. She traced the shapes with her fingers gently, as if touching the drawings would bring Maya closer. The next morning, Lion dressed carefully, choosing her simplest but nicest clothes. She tied her hair neatly and carried a small bag with snacks, a soft toy, tissues, and a bottle of water, things a mother would bring for her child. Her hands trembled as she walked to the bus stop. Her breath felt uneven. She wasn't afraid, she was overwhelmed with happiness. When she reached the orphanage gate, her heart pounded even faster. The staff greeted her warmly, congratulating her again and guiding her inside. And then she heard small footsteps running down the hallway. She turned. Maya was there wearing a clean little dress and holding her backpack. The moment she saw Lion, she ran faster, her face glowing with joy. "Mama!" she cried out softly, her voice small but full of certainty. The words struck Lion with such tenderness that tears filled her eyes instantly. She dropped to her knees and caught Maya in her arms, hugging her tightly as she cried tears of joy. "My sweet Maya," she whispered, her voice shaking. I'm here, I'm really here. Maya pressed her face into Lion's shoulder, holding her with both arms as if she wanted to fit herself perfectly into the space between Lion's arms. It felt like two pieces finally being put together after being separated for too long. The staff gave them time to hug, to breathe, to feel the moment fully. Then the director came forward with a warm smile. "She has been waiting every day," he said kindly. "She kept asking, 'When will my mama come?' Now she has her answer." Lion's tears flowed again, soft and uncontrolled. She kissed the top of Maya's head and whispered, "I will never leave you. You are mine and I am yours." The signing of papers took time, but Lion held Maya's hand through every step. Maya sat on her lap, her small fingers wrapped around Lion's thumb, refusing to let go. She kept looking at Lion's face every few minutes, as if making sure this wasn't a dream. Finally, with the last signature written, one of the caregivers said, "You may take her home now." Those words felt like the opening of a new world. As Lion walked out of the orphanage holding Maya's hand, it felt like stepping into sunlight after a long winter. Maya looked around curiously, then looked back at Lion and gave her a shy smile. "Home," she whispered. "Yes," Lion said softly, lifting her into her arms. "Our home." The bus ride back was quiet and sweet. Maya sat in Lion's lap, her head resting against her chest. She held onto a small, soft toy Lion had brought for her. The city moved quietly outside the window, cars, bicycles, people walking. But inside the bus, the world felt peaceful. When they reached Lion's room, Maya stepped inside slowly, looking around with wide eyes. She touched the pillow, picked up the small toys, and sat on the bed, bouncing slightly as if testing its softness. "For me?" she asked. "Yes," Lion replied. "Everything is for you." Maya's smile grew bright and pure. That night they shared their first dinner together, simple rice, vegetables, and a small bowl of soup. Maya ate quietly but happily, looking up at Lion every few seconds just to check she was still there. Lion watched her lovingly, her heart swelling each time she saw the peaceful expression on the girl's face. After dinner, Lion gave Maya a warm bath and wrapped her in a soft towel. The little girl leaned against her, trusting, at ease. Lion dried her hair gently and helped her change into new pajamas she had bought. Then came bedtime. Maya climbed into the small bed and pulled the blanket up to her chest. Lion sat beside her and stroked her hair slowly, humming a soft tune she remembered from her own childhood. Maya looked up at her and whispered, "Mama, you will be here in the morning?" Lion's eyes filled again, but with happiness this time. "Yes," she whispered. "Every morning." Maya nodded sleepily, closed her eyes, and drifted off with a peaceful sigh. Lion stayed beside her long after she fell asleep, watching her gentle breathing, her small hands resting softly by her face. She felt a deep warmth inside her, a warmth she had never known before. She leaned down and placed a soft kiss on Maya's forehead. "You have given me a family," she whispered. The next weeks were filled with learning, adjusting, and discovering one another. Maya learned how it felt to have a mother who checked on her, comforted her, and held her close. Lion learned how it felt to cook small meals, tie tiny shoelaces, braid hair, read bedtime stories, and soothe midnight fears with gentle words. Life was not always perfect. There were days Maya felt unsure or shy, days she needed extra reassurance. There were moments when she woke up from dreams and cried softly, calling for Mama to hold her. Each time, Lion wrapped her in her arms, whispering, "I'm here. I won't go anywhere." Slowly, Maya blossomed. She laughed more, she played more, she talked more. She drew pictures of her and Lion walking together, eating together, holding hands. She began calling Lion Mama with complete comfort, as naturally as breathing. One day at the park, Maya met another child and said proudly, "This is my mama." And she pointed at Lion with a smile so bright that Lion felt tears fill her eyes again. Lion realized something important. She had spent years believing no one wanted her, believing she had nothing special to offer. But Maya had seen differently. To Maya, she was not too old, not too plain, not too quiet, not too overlooked. To Maya, she was simply Mama, the one who came for her, the one who stayed. And as time passed, their bond grew even deeper. They spent evenings doing crafts together, mornings walking hand in hand to school, weekends exploring parks and small shops. Every night ended with a warm hug and soft goodnight words. People in the community began to know them as a gentle pair, a mother and daughter who shared a quiet but powerful love. Sometimes, when strangers asked if they were family, Lion would smile and answer with complete certainty, Yes, she is my daughter. And Maya would always squeeze her hand and whisper, forever. Lion kept all of Maya's drawings in a special box. The very first drawing, the two simple figures holding hands, was framed and hung above their bed. Whenever Lion looked at it, she remembered the moment her life changed forever. She remembered the whisper that started everything. Can you be my mommy forever? At that time, she hadn't known how to answer. She had been afraid, unsure, unprepared. But now she knew her answer with all her heart. She was Maya's mother, forever. And in giving Maya a home, she found her own. She found love. She found purpose. She found the family she once believed she would never have. Because sometimes life writes stories in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes love finds you when you think you are unworthy. And sometimes a little girl with big, hopeful eyes chooses you first.